All right. Good morning.
Morning.
Nice to have you on. Welcome to the Best Closer Show, Anne Marie. Pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for getting through the electronics to make this happen.
Not at all. It's touch and go, but thank you for having me on.
It's a
Great.
pleasure to have you on. You've done some tremendous work, and a lot of people recognize that here in the States, and there's only so many voices where you are trying to recover and go back to basics of where you once were. And I visited your country many, many times, and I can see the changes that have taken place, and I appreciate your voice. And as you know, you're going through some dramatic changes, and we have a lot of controversy, Anne Marie, including Tommy Robinson, things at Speaker's Corner, the migrants that have taken over, and the voices that are being silenced in many forms. And with that said, you're one of the voices who have not been silenced, and we appreciate you here. And thank you very much. So starting with a few things, I'd love to start a topic on, talk a little bit about the migrants, talk about how you ended up with the mayor you have and why people didn't get out to vote. I'd love to hear your comments on that. So let's start with the migrants and how they've taken over, and your thoughts on that and the next steps in making things better.
Well, it depends on which migrants you mean, really. I mean, if it's immigration from the Muslim world has been going
Yes.
on since the 1950s and 60s, as has the rape of British women by Muslim men been going on since that time. It's not. I don't. It's not necessarily a matter of taking over. Our governments are giving away our countries to strangers from the other side of the world. This is how it feels to me. That's the way it best describes it to me. We're not. It's like we've been conquered. We are subjugated in our own countries. Europeans are now the least important people in Europe. Everyone else is more important than us. So that if they have a choice between us and strangers from the other side of the world, then the strangers from the other side of the world win. They know, for example, that they're endangering women and girls with allowing these men into our societies, but they choose to do it anyway because we don't matter. You will see jobs being advertised here which say no whites. Whites are not allowed to apply for certain jobs. No, this is we're being told there's too many white people in this room. Too many white people sitting on this board. There's too many white children in this classroom. This is racial abuse. We are being degraded, subjugated in our own countries in favor of strangers from the other side of the world. In terms of taking over, that's not quite how I would put it. It's being given to them is how I would put it. And we've got huge unemployment, even generations later, with huge Muslim unemployment, for example. People are weary, people are tired of hearing about Islam, they're tired of being told what they must respect it. And it's just we're exhausted from it. People are exhausted. And the vast majority in this country and across Europe are sick and tired of being treated like this. And the majority are decent, they don't hate people, they don't want to, it is not a matter of hate, it's just a matter of being tired of being hated. We're the victims of hate here. And it's obvious and it's blatant and it's in our face all the time, and we're sick of it. And I think either decent people, decent native Europeans will stand up and say so and use the ballot box to fight back, or we could end up with something really nasty. And I don't want that. I want us to use our democracy to restore the sane voice of the majority. The majority, the British majority, is being trampled on now, and we're tired of it.
You said some key words there, the word subjugated, and I want to I want to tell people a couple things about the true numbers. First of all, in the world, in December of 2017, we hit 2 billion Muslims worldwide, and the path of Islam is an evil path that has been around for 1,500 years. And just so everyone knows, they have the same story everywhere, and it's been going on a long time. Anne Marie, they establish mosques, they create enclaves, they grow the population, they claim victimhood wherever they are. They resist all host authorities and customs. They exploit lawfare, institute Sharia, which we know is live and living in many places, including the United States and outside where you are. They secede from the Union and take control. And some of the truth of this is that Afghanistan was a Buddhist nation once. Pakistan was once a Hindu, and Lebanon was once Christian, and they all have the same pattern in mind. With that said, 80% practice or work within Sharia and think that that supersedes anything where they go, anything. And in your area, it's gotten very, very bad and affected many things, including what's happened with the mayor, including what's happened with Tommy Robinson in that case, and what has gone on there. And in fact, it even ties into what Theresa May, we're now into a point of going from full Brexit, which was needed in 100%, to Brexit light, to now barely sneaking it in the path. And I really have a high concern about the next steps of what Theresa May's doing. And even though she's trying to dance around on the stage, Anne-Marie, she is really not representing the thoughts and the prayers, and of course going back to basics of the founding principles. And I know that that is bothersome to you. So with that said, I'd love to jump into the Tommy Robinson thing a little bit. I've gotten to know him, and he's been on my show many moons ago, and I have a high concern about the next step for his case. So what are your thoughts and what you've seen gone on in this case, and what else can we help to make a difference in what's going on?
How do we make a difference? We have to keep shouting. We're making a difference. So people ask me all the time, what can we do? And I always think, you're doing it. If you're turning out to these rallies, if you're speaking, if you're speaking out online, if you're writing, this is what we're doing. We're already doing it. We are fighting back. But Tommy, I feel so sorry for him. I honestly don't know how he's put up with it for this long. He has this selfless ability to sacrifice him. So he knows what they're going to, he knows this is not going to stop. They're going to persecute him, and he's willing to take it for the good of the country. Huge personal sacrifice on his part, and he is, of course, a hero for doing so. I mean, he's back in court again. One of the things I said when this first started, when he was back in court the last time, back in jail the last time, if he wasn't Tommy Robinson, this would not be happening. We have real criminals in this country who the police don't give a damn about. But they are on the ball when it comes to Tommy Robinson. They will find any little thing they can, and they've been doing this to him for years, to try and put him away. But they'll do nothing at all about the grooming gangs and the rapists. So persecution, it is persecution. He's a hero. We must stand by him. And realize what he's doing, and do any little thing we can, whether it just be a post on Twitter or turning up to a rally. Every bit of it matters, and I think it matters a great deal to him that he knows he has this support. And it would be, if it were me, I would need to know that there were people supporting me. So we need to stand by him and show up for him. And speak out for him, and make sure people know that this is a man who's been persecuted. But as for Theresa May, I mean, the politicians couldn't be more out of touch if they tried. They have absolutely no idea what the general public is thinking. I listened to Theresa May's speech at the Conservative conference, which is just gone. She does. I mean, there's every party is going to have policies, and there's some decent policies in there, but cancer screening, for example. But these are day-to-day matters. The politicians avoid the big issues. They avoid the makeup, how our society is run. They avoid issues like immigration. They certainly avoid Islam. And they don't understand at all how the public feels. The public, all parties are going to come up with solutions and different ideas for everyday, day-to-day running of the country. It's the big issues. It's the existential issues. It's what kind of Britain will it be in 50 years' time? The politicians don't touch it, which shows how weak and useless they are. But they also don't understand that how many people care. People contact me all the time saying, I'm so worried about my children and my grandchildren and what kind of Britain they'll be living in. Will it be an Islamic State? Yes. Quite possibly, quite probably, in fact. But you'll never hear the politicians talk about these big issues. I think they're just not up to the job, and I think we need to get rid of them. Simple as that. We need to replace them.
I appreciate your passion on that. As you know, we're lucky, and we fought hard to get President Trump in office, and he says what we think, and I know you don't have that in your country. In fact, I get a lot of comments from the UK saying, I wish we had President Trump. I wish we had that voice, someone willing to take the bullets or the incoming nails in the coffin to be able to withstand what's going on. And the question I get a lot is, why won't a Theresa May? Why won't the Queen? Why won't anyone make a comment about these things? They tiptoe around it. They will not tackle the big subjects of what's going on because they're afraid. And by 2052, Muslims will be the world majority, and they outpopulate us at 5-1. And it's not a religion of peace. We know what it stands for. And it is creeping into the United States, if you haven't seen. We have found multiple Sharia courts. We have had issues already in finding a compound recently, if you haven't heard, where they were training children at the age of 6 to 13 how to shoot guns. And so when they go to middle school, they could take out other people in the name of Islam. And you know what happened? They were released from court, and they were picked back up by the FBI afterwards. And not much has been done since that. And there are multiples of these things going on. And what I just told you is probably in multiplicity in your area of what you're dealing with. You have it in the news daily with stabbings, knives. I see it almost every day, and we try to cover the news. And I think you're seeing it daily. Am I right?
Pretty much, yeah. If it's not daily, it certainly feels daily. London is London. I don't know how to describe London anymore. We have a mayor who is linked to jihadism. You know, it's not just a matter of that Sadiq Khan is a Muslim. He's a Muslim who has a history of anti-Western rhetoric. He was involved with the Muslim Council of Britain, which is a pro-Sharia advocacy group, a nasty group. And when he was standing for Mayor of London, his opponent, the Conservative Zach Goldsmith, simply questioned him, as did David Cameron, who was the Prime Minister at the time, simply questioned his links to jihadi groups. And David Cameron was shouted down in the House of Commons as a racist, simply for questioning, for raising legitimate questions about Sadiq Khan's Islamist past. And he does have one. So it's not just that he's a Muslim, it's that he's actually a Muslim who is involved with jihadi groups, or has been involved with jihadi groups. And the Muslim Council of Britain is a suit and tie jihad, as I call it. Under his watch, London has, I don't, you know, obviously in a big city, there's always going to be crime. But this is, it's almost uncivilized barbarism taking place on the streets of London. Londoners didn't suddenly, the British didn't suddenly start macheting each other in the streets. This was imported, and it's continually imported. And Sadiq Khan still doesn't think it's any of his responsibility, and still will raise issues like these sort of virtue signaling celebrity politicians. That's what they are. They see themselves as celebrities. They don't have to do any actual work for the people. They're just celebrities. He'll make a big issue out of things like climate change. And he's named it as one of his priorities, in fact. While London, for the first time, overtakes New York in terms of murder rates, he was emphasizing climate change. This is what we have. We have politicians who are utterly useless about real day-to-day, real issues, day-to-day running of the country, or the big issues. They're simply not there. They're absent. They're busy off at some event, highlighting some obscure policies, like climate change. It's the perfect example. That's what they do. Or he'll turn up to a Women's Day or something, while Sharia courts are spreading all over the country and operating with impunity, and I believe there's one pretty much everywhere there are Muslims, and they're treating women like dirt, and yet this guy will say nothing about that, but go off and do some poncy sort of show. They're putting on a show. They're useless, and he is among the most useless of them. He's dangerous as well, but I don't even know how to describe it, and it all happened so quickly as well. This is what blows my mind. It happened overnight. The immigration didn't, sure, but in the last 5 years, the transformation has been immense. It's like we're living in a science fiction film. That's how I really think of it. We have all these massive, real problems, and yet our newspapers behave as if it's not happening, and our politicians behave as if it's not happening. And you're left thinking, I think people are confused. They're thinking, well, what? Surely, why isn't Theresa May talking about these massive issues? And she's very quick to talk about Russia, for example. She's very quick to get tough on certain issues, but she was very quick to turn up to Grenfell Tower, for example, this accidental fire in London, but nothing for the tens of thousands of girls gang raped by Muslim gangs. She had nothing to say about that, but she's on the scene for an accidental fire because the victims are what matters. The victims in Grenfell were illegal immigrants largely, whereas the victims of the rape gangs are only white English girls, so they don't actually matter. Illegal immigrants, there's PC virtue signal points in that. There's no PC virtue signal points in standing up for white English girls, so they don't bother. This is our political class. They need to go.
You have articulated that exactly. You were concerned if you articulated it right. You truly did. In fact, I heard, and from my research, you had well over 100 Sharia courts at least identified outside of the London proper area. And in the United States, we have an organization called CARE. You've heard of them, I'm sure. And they have filings as a nonprofit organization here. We've gone through similar things that you just described. The climate change thing, getting out of the Paris Climate Accord. We had, and you may not have heard this part, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration admitted 9 months ago that they turned in false data, and it actually was 1 degree cooler. The polar ice caps have grown by 13%, and they falsified the data. Now, what that did to the United States is we lost about 10 to 13 trillion dollars. We lost about 15 million jobs, and every green potential energy opportunity or job which wouldn't pay off has failed. And you know that failed under our, what I call Barack Hussein Obama, and he set our country back to the late 60s. The EU took away something that was held dear to the folks in the UK, especially in London. It set you back very far, fiscally as one part, and you lost the ability to be yourselves. The identity was gone, and now you're struggling to get it back. And we do need more people speaking out loud, and it's very tough. As you know, many people are silenced because they fear their job. They fear just speaking out. You may have heard of a woman named Amy who was punched recently. Have you heard her name before?
I vaguely aware.
She was on my show yesterday, and Amy has been targeted. She's been punched, and she was arrested for saying the term. She said this term at Speaker's Corner. She said, "Have a gay day." Now, as you know, years ago, people would use the term gay in terms of happy or gay, and she was arrested for this, and she has a court date coming up. So it's basically the thought police, and the police are not doing their job either. The identity is gone, and we need someone that has that microphone and to not dance around these subjects. And Theresa May will never, at this date, say anything like you discussed on a stage or on a microphone ever. I don't see it happening.
No, but she's not the only one. I mean, the entire political class is like this. David Cameron was the same, and prior to him was the same. We haven't. What we have are politicians, and we need leaders. We haven't had a leader, I don't think, since Thatcher. Whatever one thinks of her, I quite admired her in many respects. But I think she was the last British leader, and what we need is a leader. So it's, Theresa May is useless, but she's one of many. And it's interesting what you say about the police. I mean, the police are arresting people for all sorts of things, anything except crime, it seems to me. They're on the ball. But we have the transformation of the police is glaringly obvious. They are no longer law enforcers. They are enforcers of political opinion. They're regulators of political opinion. This is what they do now. You will have police knocking on doors, and we at our national conference, the For Britain National Conference, had someone speak to us who the police had knocked on his door about a video he'd made more than once. He was critical of Islam. They wanted him to speak to an imam to have him, re-educated. And they asked him what he was teaching his children, whether or not he was telling his children these things. So the police are knocking at our door now, telling us what we're allowed to say to our kids, and also wanting to, re-educate us by imams. This is what the police spend their time on, and they're not embarrassed about it either. They'll go on Twitter and tell you that hate crime is a big priority to us, hate speech. And yet, you've got a kid being gang raped down the road, and they'll do nothing. In fact, they'll leave her there and focus on Twitter. This transformation of the police has been rapid and terrifying. And they're now sort of social engineers. They're engineering society. They take speech or any sort of political dissent from the multicultural mass immigration society far, far more seriously than they do real crimes. Even the Metropolitan Police said, as I say, they're not embarrassed about this. They say it publicly. We're not going to investigate burglaries or some assaults. This is the police of London. Now, first of all, you're advertising to burglars that you're not going to do anything about it, so well done there. But secondly, you're telling the people that they don't matter to you anymore. If I get assaulted in the street and the police, I don't matter. I'm simply this European, this white European, I don't matter. If I'm a certain victim class, I might matter. But meanwhile, they have 900 plus hate crime officers. The police are telling us they're not going to prosecute or not going to investigate burglaries. And in my experience of speaking to many people, they don't even investigate child rape. They don't bother. But they have 900 officers dedicated to hate crime. In other words, dedicated to political engineering and the engineering of our opinions in society. This rapid transformation of the police is absolutely terrifying. And one of the things we have to turn around really, really quickly if we're going to survive at all.
Spot on. In fact, you've seen, I used to visit Sweden a lot, and you know what's gone on in Sweden. In fact, they've even segregated areas where women only can go to certain areas in a park because they have something very in common everyone has. Same in Canada with Trudeau. They have the highest rape numbers in their country's history, the highest murder rates coming back. But yet, in retrospect, if you look at what Hungary decided to do and took a bold move, and the first thing you're supposed to do as the leader is represent and protect your citizens. And Hungary has done that boldly and proudly. President Trump is doing that boldly and proudly. Japan has a low crime rate for certain reasons. And again, this goes back to Muslims as well. When President Trump made his bold comment, and you may remember this in 2015, he said rapists and murderers are coming over our border, and people freaked out. But no one wanted to look at the real numbers, Anne-Marie. The real numbers in the U.S. over the last decade, especially under the most dangerous leader we've ever had, was that we've had 2 million crimes that we would not have had. We've also had 200,000 plus rapes, and we've also had 2,200 plus murders. And people tend to think that it's only one person, and they don't want to look at the demographics to find out the truth. The numbers are the truth. It's hurtful, and when the public reacts the way they do with vitriol, saying you're being racist for not letting them in, we're actually being racist for meaning allowing the borders to stay open, because we are harming our citizens in a very big way. So some of the things I had said yesterday's show, Anne-Marie, was this, that after 9/11 happened here, the first thing we should have done, the very first thing, is let all visa people that are here leave, shut our borders down with military, rebuilt our infrastructure, protect our power grids, and done the right things by our citizens. And within that decade, we would be in a much better place. And the first thing you do when you fly, Anne-Marie, you put on the oxygen mask first, and then you put it on your child second. And that's the reason, and we should take that to heart in our countries too, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, after 9/11, the whole Western world should have woke up, should have looked and said, oh, whoa, what is this? Why are we being attacked here? It should have looked at the religion. It should have examined the impact of immigration from this society. This is common sense stuff. If you open your borders to people who hate you, you're asking for trouble. And 9/11 should have been, what's happened since 9/11 is shocking, because that should have been the time when the Western world woke up and said, look, this religion has been slaughtering and murdering its way around the world for, as you said at the beginning, 1,500 years. Why on earth are we continuing to allow it in? And it's also a very, it's a very important point what you said about crimes that wouldn't have otherwise happened. And this is something that you cannot seem to get through to the open border left-wing moron, is that these people wouldn't have been attacked if you hadn't opened the borders. We're talking about individuals here. You're talking about individuals' lives being destroyed. If you look, for example, at Sweden and the rape crisis there, these women are, we have women who've been gang raped on, and it's been streamed on Facebook. These individuals would not have been attacked if the borders hadn't been opened. Why is there so little concern for these individuals? Why aren't we protecting our own people? I mean, I'm preaching to the converted here, I know, but you're absolutely right. And it's a point that has to be driven home time and time again. People who have been attacked and murdered by Muslims in Europe and in the West would not have been attacked if we hadn't opened our borders to this religion. Simple as that. Therefore, if we want to prevent further attacks in the future, we have to start thinking and talking and actually doing it, in fact, closing the borders to these countries. I know it's difficult, but it has to be done. How much more are we going to put up with? How many more examples do we need? How many more lives destroyed? How many more children raped? How many more people blown to bits in the streets are we going to put up with before we do anything? I think we're reaching the point. I think there will be a political change. I'm optimistic, though. I'm an optimist by nature. But I do think it's coming. I do think change is coming. People have had enough, and the political class is completely unaware. It's like they live in a bubble, on another planet. They're completely unaware of it, but it's coming, and they're in for a shock. And statistics in this country show that almost half of the country wants a complete ban on immigration from Muslim countries. Not a complete ban on immigration. People have not suddenly become we hate everyone who isn't us, but they recognize Islam, and they know what it is, and they know it's a poison, and they want rid of it. And no political party will touch it apart from ours, for Britain. And that is the key to our success. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Change is coming.
I see it too. Separating from the EU and doing a full Brexit and protecting your country is of grave importance to who you once were. And having relatives that have lived there and seeing the changes that have happened, you're right. The change is coming quickly. In fact, sometimes you have to go through something so horrible to get to a better place. Just like when there's a natural disaster, the sun and rainbow rises again. And for me, I have a history with President Trump for 32 years. I tried out for his TV show in season 2. I've met him a couple times. I understand that everything he touches, he's made a difference on. And that's a fact, and it's been proven by the numbers. And on my show, I had death threats. I went through the worst. I had the Federal Bureau of Investigations at my house. I had to live in a hotel with my family. We actually got someone arrested that threatened me and President Trump. It was a Muslim in another state. And so I went through that, and my family didn't want me on the air anymore. So sometimes, as I said, you have to go through the worst to get to the brighter place. And there are probably a great handful of me here, Anne-Marie, that use new media with hundreds of thousands of viewers to be able to get out the message. And maybe one day I'll be silenced here and have to find another means to communicate. But with President Trump at the helm, we have the opportunity in the next 6 years to make the biggest difference of all time. And you need that same type of person in that position to speak what the citizens think. And the moment that happens, the change will occur. And I see the uprising happening from what I'm hearing. What do you foresee in the next 2 years if you had to look forward of where things could and should be based, where your heart lies at this point?
Well, I see a growing discontent with the European Union. This is key. And to me, and I've said this many times, Brexit, of course, we have to pursue it with everything we've got. But to me, it's not enough. I think the EU has to go. And I think we'll only ever be free of it when it's gone. We need to move quickly with this because the EU is deliberately flooding Europe with migrants from cultures that are incompatible with in order to destabilize us, in order to subjugate us. And it is a subjugation because we are told, both implicitly and explicitly, we are told that we are less important than the people who are coming in from the other side of the world. People understand that the European Union is accelerating this. They understand why it's happening. So I see a turnaround against the European Union. This is key. We need to restore the nation state. It's going to happen at the ballot box, I believe. It's already happening at the ballot box, except in Britain, unfortunately, yet. Our party will fill that void. But if you look across Europe, people like Geert Wilders, he went from nothing to the second largest party in the Netherlands within a decade or so. This is happening. It is happening. You look also at Marine Le Pen. She went from an absolute pariah in France to almost the president, and she should have been the president. So there's a massive change happening. It's already happening. It's coming. It will happen at the ballot box. We will get people into authority who will change the direction of Europe and send it back in a European direction and restore the European nation state. But there will be trouble. I don't think there's any way out of this now that won't involve, I'm sorry to say, violence. Because for example, if I was Prime Minister tomorrow, I would start enforcing the law. I would add deportation to the list of punishments for lawbreakers who are not British citizens, and I would start enforcing the law. For example, I would close down mosques who preach violence. And if I do that, and I would, then you've got to expect that there's going to be a backlash. Muslims are not going to take this lying down. So you've got to have the army ready. And I do mean the army ready to quash this, to restore order, because you're going to have trouble. For example, a woman was arrested in France recently for wearing a niqab. So, you know, the Islamic face veil is illegal in France. Good for them. It should be illegal here. Not that it matters much if the law is not enforced. But she was arrested for this. 5 days of rioting followed. This is what happens. And this is one of the reasons why people are afraid, why the law is afraid to take on Islam, is because we know what's going to happen. They're going to react with violence. But you be ready for that violence. This is the point. Be ready for that violence. We need to have an army that is fit for purpose. I don't think we do at the moment. We need to have a police force that is fit for purpose. I don't think we do at the moment. Once you have those two things in place and you're ready for the violent response, then you can do it. If you're ready to quash that violent response, then you can do it. All we need to do is enforce the law. And we will. It's coming. It is coming.
You mentioned law. President Trump is the law and order president, and we were not honoring and following the laws on the books, similar to what you just said. We were not. And because of that, sanctuary cities and other things have risen up over the last decade and really degraded our cities. And every democratically ruled city is still in the worst financial and spiritual and every position ever. And let me give you some demographics. Before 9/11, the United States had a few hundred mosques. Since 9/11, we have 3,550 mosques in the United States. Now, when President Trump took office over for Barack Obama, before that, Barack Obama had a standing executive order that we and our military were not allowed to bomb the mosques. So every time you would look like on camera that we were bombing what was going on overseas, we were bombing empty buildings to please the camera. When President Trump came in, he had an executive order that says we will bomb the blank out of those mosques. And because of that, the mosques were making the passports. The mosques were printing all of the details, money printing, passport printing. That's where it breeds. And so, unfortunately, they are destroying people and their families. And by the way, 4-year-olds do chant to kill the Jew. 4-year-olds are chanting to kill the infidel. And that's what they're trained. And if that's ingrained in you at 4, imagine what happens when you're 10 or when you're 15. You become that person of hate. So our numbers have changed dramatically. And like you said about shutting down the mosque, be prepared with the military. We do need to use our military like you do. We do need to be prepared. But that's where it breeds. And people are afraid to speak like you and I speak. And it's going to take a lot of us to back that up, even more of us, to continue. And an example, Katie Hopkins watches my show. She's been a tremendous voice in many forms. And she uses the camera wherever she can. Amy Meck. Waleed Ferris, Sebastian Gorka watch my show. I've gotten to know offline some of these people, and I appreciate each and every one of them. I wish I could sit here and list 100 of them versus 10 of them, and that's where we need to make a change. And I know people put a lot on the line to speak this way. Have you dealt with some of the things I mentioned that I've dealt with in terms of personally?
You know, I've been luckier than some. I have had death threats. I have had the police at my house when I answered the door to the police, my question to them was, "Are you here to arrest me or protect me?" And they said, "We're here to protect you on this occasion," you know, making a joke of it. Nothing, you know, I've been quite lucky. I've lost my Twitter account, for example.
I saw that, yes.
Which was a real pain, actually.
Yes, it is.
But I've been quite lucky. I have made, you know, my career is over. I should have been a lawyer. I spent years studying to be a lawyer, and I won't practice a single day now because of this. I've lost my relationship. I've lost, you know, there is huge personal sacrifice, but I'm a lot luckier than some, and I haven't been persecuted by the police yet.
Your voice is important, and I know you've probably not realized maybe the difference in the last 5 years of what you've become, but your voice is important to many people that need to hear that things can be better. And you mentioned being an optimist. You also mentioned Margaret Thatcher. So when you said that, of course, we miss her too, and we understand the relationship even with Ronald Reagan and all those things were the good times, right? Did they have an influence on you, either Thatcher or Churchill, in your life and the way you've you know, your belief system and all that? Tell me the impact they had on you.
You know, Margaret Thatcher. I grew up. Used to be Labour. I used to be a Labour voter. I used to be a member of the Labour Party, in fact. So that's your Democrats, I'm sure you know. so on that side of the fence, you were sort of raised to think of Thatcher as some sort of devil. And I know a lot of people who have sort of done this, gone away as adults and researched her for themselves and completely transformed how they think of her. To me, she is a great, you see, what distinguishes people like Thatcher from what we have today is she was a leader. She wasn't a politician, she was a leader. She had a vision. She was the last really, truly pro-British Prime Minister. And she had a vision for the country. She loved the country, but she knew who she was, she knew where she wanted to go, and she was going to lead the country there. And she was steadfast. There was this solid inner strength that leaders have, that she is the last leader in that respect that I think this country has had. She's had a much bigger influence on me in the last few years than, because I grew up in the 80s when she was Prime Minister. But I've learned a lot about her. My admiration, like Donald Trump, actually, I've learned a lot about him in the last couple of years, and my admiration for him has grown, just as it has for Thatcher. And I would like, I would like to see a leader in this country, not a politician, a leader. And I'd like to think that our party can fill that void, because I think, I'm not here for my ego. I don't actually particularly want to do this job. I don't, it's not something I set out to be. I'm not here because I like the sound of my own voice or I like pictures of myself. Quite the opposite, in fact. I love this country, and I am steadfast. I'm quite self-confident in what I believe in. I believe in this, and what I know to be true, I will stand by. There's I'm not going to bend. I'm not going to appease. I'm not going to pretend black is white. And I think that sort of solid strength is what's needed if we're going to come back from this. I do believe our party is the answer to this, and I that's a big claim, and it sounds like a boastful claim. It isn't. It's because I think we're at the right time. We've got the right message, and I know what drives me. And it's love for the country and love for our liberties and wanting to preserve sanity and truth. That's what drives me. And I trust myself to be to stand firm and to deliver, and to not bow down or appease or backpedal. And I think we're ready. I think the time is coming for us, and we intend to step in and take up that role of being a pro-Britain party again, some sort of pro-British leadership, something that acknowledges this country, its identity, its heritage, its contribution to the world, and give it some praise for a change. All we ever hear, children in this country are taught to hate the country, and that's across the board in Europe. We've got to stand up for this country again. It's an old country. It's contributed immeasurably to the world. It's time for a bit of self-esteem and a bit of self-confidence, and stop this running ourselves down all the time. Europe is just infested with this self-hatred. It's got to stop. We've done nothing wrong, nothing more than anyone else has done wrong, and we've actually contributed immensely to the world, and brought amazing things. This is a good country. It's a good, it's done good. It's introduced, liberty itself. The Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights. These documents came out of England and influenced the world, influenced freedom and liberty all over the world. We've a lot to be proud of, and I think it's time we were.
Quite a bit. Our relationship needs to be more solid than ever, as you know, and it's going to be rough with Theresa May not following through on her promises. And you mentioned some beautiful things there. One word as well that you emulated is pride, and something President Trump reinstalled in us is pride in your country, and it starts with the flag. And although it's a symbol, it's just a symbol, that symbol emulates who we are, and you described it in a pure sense. And we are starting to get that back. In fact, if you haven't noticed, things are ticking even further right with something called the Walk Away March, where people, out of pureness, are researching the reasons why they were part of the Democrat Party and finding out the truth, not the truth they were told, but the truth in which that was written in the history books. And that, out of the pure sense, is moving them towards the right. Now, they don't have to become a Republican to do so, Anne-Marie. They are leaving and they're supporting this president, and he is the great disruptor and interrupter, and reinstalling the faith and the belief in the police and the veterans that protect our nation, which is 1%, protects the 99% of us. resets the boundaries of who we are and reminds people that without that, we would not be who we are today. We all fought, we've had our differences in our history, and because of that, we had become a beautiful relationship, especially with Thatcher. She emulated the country of what it was. She did emulate that in every speech, which I've gone back and watched, and it would be beautiful to see that again, in some sense, a 2.0 version of that feeling. And so as you watch us make the changes we make, I get a lot of people telling me, boy, I wish we had that. Boy, I wish we had that. But I believe it's coming. I don't know who the person's going to be, but every time I've seen you speak, you have the passion. I didn't want to do this. I'm retired. I had no thought of doing anything what I'm doing and gained a beautiful following. Just for you the same. You had no thought of years later being in the position you are and potentially being the voice for many people. And you have to agree, that has tremendous responsibility every time you type something or say something. You put yourself out there on the line. It's not an easy position to be in, right?
No, but it's also an honor. And I, you know, we're on this planet one time, and why not do something with it? That's how I feel. It's so important and it's so significant. I think of future generations. This is what I think, you know, it's unbearable to me to think of Britain in a couple of generations time living in an Islamic state. I simply can't bear it. And I'll do anything I can. As I say, we're only here once. Why not step up to the plate? Why not do something responsible? Why not grasp the nettle? Why not, you know, fight for something that matters? And that's what I'm doing. And I you know, as hard as it is, and it is hard, there are great aspects to it. I meet fantastic people, for example. That's the best aspect of it. But I'm proud. I'm proud of what our party is achieving. I'm proud of how many people we speak for. And we're doing, you know, our first election tests was last May, and we did really well. We came in ahead of established parties that have been there for years and years. I'm really proud of that. And that, to me, is an indicator of how much people want change. I am very excited about the next few years for us, for my party. I think it's going to happen. I really do.
I love hearing that, and I can see some of the comments that people are appreciating what you're saying there and your optimism. In May of 2017, President Trump made a strategic visit to Saudi Arabia, and as you know, they had a major regime change with a new family that's in charge. And if you do or don't know, they have housing for 3 million migrants that are available for us to drive the migrants to this area, because eventually they should go back to their homeland, and they should not be establishing future caliphates elsewhere and trying to make it larger. And so we need to start figuring out ways to drive them towards using what's available in Saudi Arabia, because they owe us a debt of gratitude and a debt of money. And because of that exchange, we got them to fund Israel with $12 billion recently, which was not reported in the press. And some of that money will include going after Hezbollah, which is the largest crime syndicate in the world, Hamas, and Iran, which took the time to establish nuclear bases in Syria under the guise of Russia and many other people. So people don't know some of the truths going on in that area, and we are most recently have surrounded Iran with many strategic bases where at some point something's going to come to a head, Anne-Marie, where the mullahs are going to have to be on the run, or they're going to have to let the people be free. And the people, as you know, want their country back. And I'm sure you've heard rumblings of that as well. And I don't know how that affects your area there, but what is your take of what's going on there and what to do with Iran?
Well, I think Trump may bring down the mullahs of Iran. He's the most effective president I can remember. I remember somebody saying, I think on Twitter said it, when you see how much Trump has done in 2 years, you wonder if any of the other presidents were ever actually trying. But I think he could bring down the mullahs of Iran. I think the people of Iran, they're significant. Iran is quite, I mean, it's one of the most brutal Islamic states. But it's also, there's something different about it, something different about Iranians. They don't sort of fit into this Muslim shoes. they were, of course, conquered and turned into a Muslim society. I think Trump could well bring down the mullahs of Iran. I do, and I think if that's it won't be his only achievement, but far from it. But even if that was his only achievement, it would change the world. Iran is a poison. We all know what it does around the world. We all know the terrorism it sponsors. We all know that it's genocidal in its Jew hatred. It's a nation. It's a regime that has to go, and I think Trump can bring it down. I really do. Trump, in partnership with the Iranian people who are sick and tired of it. I think the economic sanctions will work. I think it was the withdrawing from this nuclear, the absurdity of allowing any capacity for Iran to build nuclear weapons. You know, how naive and stupid can you be? Trump knows this stuff. This is what makes him so effective. He's got common sense. He knows you don't even begin to hint towards capacity for nuclear weapons for Iran. I think he'll bring them down, and I hope so. But I really do think he can do it.
It's so important to that region, the difference it will make, because if you flash back to the late 60s or early 70s, they were things were fantastic there, and they want that renaissance. And now we see North Korea going in a great direction where one day they can be I don't know if there'll ever be Korea, but I do see that Kim Jong-un wants a taste of the money, and they have zero GDP today, meaning they don't have an economy of scale. And if they just look across the border at South Korea, we birthed them as a stepchild into a powerhouse. We did the same thing in Japan, and we can create that for him. And he wants a taste of that money. With all that said, now we're looking at a possible two-state solution with Israel and Palestine, and according to many sources here, we're within 2 months of something quite strategic and special that could happen. And I think it will be the closest we will ever come to brokering something there. And Anne-Marie, if that happens there, if what happens with the mullahs happening, what we have left is dealing with what's going on in South Africa.
Right. I mean, we also have to deal with what's going on in Europe. You know, as Trump is doing amazing work around the world, and I think, as I said, I think he can utilize Iran. This in itself would make the world a lot safer. But we have huge problems in Europe that we need to deal with here. But South Africa, wow. I mean, look, this is a racist government passing racist laws, and anti-white, of course, because it's anti-white, it doesn't matter. And anti-white is a global phenomenon. Whites are being subjected to severe racial abuse and racial repression all over the world. And because it's whites, it doesn't matter, adding to the actual insult and the oppression. You know, our Prime Minister, Theresa May, went to South Africa recently and told them that she would support this seizing of private land from private citizens based on race. She would support it as long as it was legal and fair. I mean, give me a break. How can it possibly be fair? And anything can be legal if a corrupt racist government passes a law to make it legal. But it's obscene. And I think that Europeans ought to be shouting about this and actually offering help and assistance, including, of course, asylum, because we have real need for people. But of course, they don't want to leave. They don't want to come to Europe, and who can blame them? They want to stay on their own land. Of course, we need to do something about that. And you know, Donald Trump just saying, I think he tweeted about it, didn't he? That he was going to investigate. I mean, even just him putting out a tweet, you can feel the ripple effects. Extraordinary stuff. But yes, South Africa has to be dealt with.
Yes.
Be exposed, you know, just if we could just get onto the world stage that this is racism, this is race hate, this is racial abuse and racial oppression. Even if someone with his gravitas just said that, it would change things.
You're right. You're right. Theresa May missed a tremendous opportunity to own the world stage there, and she could have asserted herself as a group of upward of like a world leader, but she didn't. She kowtowed to what was going on. You know, we lived for 8 years where bathrooms, special bathrooms became important, and supporting of all Black Lives Matter and thuggery versus supporting the police and the veterans. And it was such a downtrodden time for us. Not many spoke up. In fact, we were apologetic to the world. As you know, he went on an apology tour apologizing for the U.S. and the things we've said and the things we've done. Because a lot of times, as you know, we dabble in other people's governments where we shouldn't. In fact, when people complain about dealing with politics, we also assert ourselves in many other, political moments in other countries where we shouldn't. So we do it as much as anyone else. That's a fact. And
Sure,
yeah, no, absolutely true. We've learned from these mistakes, and we're making a difference here, Anne Marie. It's a fight every day. And so the reason I'm proud to have you on is because you're just another voice who has asserted herself with her passion and pride for the country out of purity. And the people in suits do not represent the people in the boots. And that's how we articulate it here, because the people on the street, the Rust Belt in the UK, the ones that wanted Brexit the most, are not getting what they voted for. And people need to rise up together and realize that they're not getting represented in your area the way they should be, because you have quite the beautiful place that needs to be restored to its original glory. And President Trump, if you don't know, before he took office, he promised the American people that he would restore the White House, even though it's a symbol, to its original glory. And if you don't know what happened, the Obamas updated it, spent over $30 million degrading it, and did something, wouldn't even use the Resolute desk that other presidents used. And they had a Muslim prayer room where the China room was, and that was the worst piece of anything we ever heard. So when President Trump said, "I will restore it to its original glory," it was one of the most amazing things, even though it's a symbol, that made the people believe that we were back on track. And you could imagine that that is a great feeling for us.
Yeah, lucky you.
Very lucky.
It'll happen here as well.
Mm-hmm.
We have to suffer a little bit more, it seems, before we get there, but not much.
Not much, yes. Well, we're fighting here, but we appreciate you and what you're doing there. Any last words you'd like to say, or anything else that you have coming up that we could speak on your behalf here? What's coming up in the next few months that you'll be doing that we could either promote or I could play or talk about in the future for you?
Promote our party, please. I know there are a lot of people in America who care about Britain, who care about Europe. Europeans, other countries in Europe have a political response. In Britain, so far, there hasn't been one until we came along. So we really need help. We really need promotion. We really need support, because this is the only party I trust. Our party, For Britain, is the only party I trust to do this, to do what needs to be done. The people are with us. The people are on our side. And I know that if we can communicate, the greater we can communicate with the British public, the more support we will get. Any help that allows us to communicate with the public is what we need. Trust us. You know, if you care about Britain, trust us to get this job done. But we need help. We need support. We need money. We need any practical support people can give us, because we don't have the mainstream media. The mainstream media either ignores us because they know people will agree with us, or dismisses us as far right, racist, fascist, the usual stuff. And the social media, as you know, is closing in. I lost my Twitter account. I fully expect that we may lose other. You know, the social media is going to get smaller and smaller. The walls are closing in on us, but the people are on our side. So any help at all. I want America to trust For Britain, to understand that we are the answer to this, and to give us any help they possibly can. I'm coming to the US, by the way, in November. I'm really looking forward to that, and I'll be meeting a lot of people there who are also involved in this kind of activism. So I'm just going to keep pushing. I'm just going to keep building this party. I know that we can do this, and I know that we will stand firm. There'll be no buying us. There'll be no pushing us around, and I know that this is the answer to save Britain. So any support at all that we can get from the United States would be very, very much appreciated. So please,
you got it. What is your main website for everyone is asking me?
forbritain.uk.
forbritain.uk, and I have been following your rise in your party. The person that turned me onto you, his name is Graham_British on Twitter, and you have a lot of people. And I asked people on my show yesterday, don't be a fan of my show, don't be a viewer. Get engaged and be part of the process. Stop the nonsense online. Stop tweeting the nonsense that don't need to be tweeted. Don't get involved with people that are being negative. You have to stand by people, not behind them. If you stand behind someone, it sounds good, but you can't be seen or heard. Stand by them, and you can make a much bigger difference. And you need a lot more people to stand by you to also have that voice and carry it forward. So when you come to the U.S., if you can say, where will you be? Are you coming to the Washington, D.C. area?
Florida.
You're going to Florida?
Yeah.
And you have a speaking engagement or anything?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to coordinate with your assistant if I could. I could try to simulcast your event on my show and put it out for the people so we can get it to the masses as much as possible, if you would
Let's
allow
see.
that.
I mean, it's not my event, so let's talk about this. But it's not my event, so I don't know what the filming will be. But let's catch up afterwards.
I would love that.
Certainly, definitely. Thank you.
It would be a pleasure. So thank you very much for being on my show. We appreciate you and what you've done and where you're going. And if I can help in any way and you would return to the show, I'll be glad to help be the voice here and get it out to the masses on your behalf.
One last thing I'd like to people to read my book, Beyond Terror, Islam's Slow Erosion of Western Democracy. It's on Amazon. There is a chapter on the United States. And you mentioned CARE. I've researched them, so I think people would be interested. You know, I called it Beyond Terror because it's the slow, stealth transformation of Western society by Islam rather than terror attacks. It's that sort of the cultural change. And there's a chapter in there about the United States. So I really would appreciate also if people would read that book.
Okay. And where could they get that again? Say it again, and where can they get it?
It's on Amazon.
On Amazon. So everyone, please take a look at the book, and maybe we can discuss some of the book next time you're on. I think that would be wonderful as well. And if you've ever heard of Simon in Sweden, Simon was on my show, and he is the aforementioned most researcher on things regarding Islam. And he has a database of things that goes well beyond my research and potentially some of things that you've done in your book. And he's a tremendous source and keeps himself anonymous online for potential reasons, as you know. So we need more outspoken people about this subject. So everyone, please check out Anne-Marie's book. I want to thank you very much for being part of my show today. The viewers have enjoyed it very much, and I look forward to communicating offline with you.
Sure. Thank you very much, and please stay in touch.
Thank you. I will. Cheers. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, everyone, I want to thank Anne-Marie very much for being on my show. I am so lucky to have a tremendous guest like Anne-Marie be able to share her voice here in the United States and beyond, because we have a far reach here. I am so overjoyed, seriously, to have her on. By giving her a larger platform everywhere, we have a chance at making a difference there. And President Trump's voice has started this process. And if you go back a little bit, when Brexit was first announced, it started the process of an uprising of people trying to get back to their original selves, to reclaim their identity. Thank you, Ironheart. And we've done that here, and we have started something so beautiful. You must understand that we are now the catalyst, and everyone looks to us as the source, saying, if you can do it, we can do it. If you can overcome what Barack Obama did to destroy your nation and bring you to the brink of losing everything, if you can overcome that, many other countries like the UK, Britain, has a chance. They have a huge, huge chance. And so we have to fight alongside our brothers and sisters out there and remember our history with them. Remember when Margaret Thatcher was the true leader and she emulated what the country was about. Every time she got with Reagan, every time she spoke, you felt pretty good. And you actually were like a fan of what she did. Karen, I did bring up Amy at the beginning, and we did discuss Amy at the beginning in case you missed it. We did discuss that and Tommy at the beginning. I'm just overjoyed that I had her on my show. Do you understand how important this is for everything that we're all doing together? I'm not just a show. We're a voice of the people now, and I take that with a lot of responsibility. So it's my responsibility to help Anne-Marie's voice be much larger. And when we reach hundreds of thousands of people, we're doing something special. So now that we've started this renaissance, do you understand the importance of your damn vote in November now? Do you understand what's at stake in November? Do you understand it's not funny to just do stuff online? It doesn't make any sense. This is bigger than Twitter. This is bigger than, Facebook crap. This is absolutely huge to me. I know it's huge to you guys because I've seen your comments. And so it's our responsibility to represent President Trump and give back to him the greatness he gave to us. And that means we owe one pure thing, the easiest job of all, but the most important, which is what? Voting in November. We're not a Democrat. We can't vote multiple times. We're not dead. We can't vote Democrat yet. We have a responsibility to reclaim our nation and to set a standard for people like Anne-Marie that she could have the same opportunities where she's at. If we do this right, we become the model for all countries, including Iran, that has a shot to reclaim things. Imagine the next step in Iran if the mullahs are on the run. Imagine the Iranians getting their country back, the pure sense of that in the people. We don't need to rebuild it for them. We don't need to militarize and make it America again. They can reclaim themselves. If we come up with a two-state solution and it actually works, and Israel's still in charge, but it works, we've done something major that nobody could ever broker. North Korea is going to work out just fine, as I have told you for 2 years, and it's on the way. Anyone afraid of anything else hasn't been watching the truth. Okay? We have an opportunity to really be on the world stage for the next 100 years for what we've accomplished if we do this right today. So I know I'm motivating you and saying a bunch of stuff about that, but it's of the utmost importance. I want to thank Sharon, which is works with Anne-Marie, who helped broker this interview. Sharon was tremendous in communication, so Sharon, if you're still watching, cheers and kudos to you for putting together this interview. Graham_British, who has watched my show from the beginning, who introduced me to Tommy Robinson, and many other influential people have gotten them to watch my show, beyond the show. I can't thank Graham enough for his communication and making this happen. He's fighting for his country, and he made sure that with my voice and hundreds of thousands of people that I could do something for Anne-Marie. So I'm very thankful. I agree, Ironheart. I'm very, very thankful for the people that make this a we show and not a me show. I started in my kitchen just talking to a couple thousand people about my thoughts and feelings and ideas on politics. And now it became something where we're the top place on Periscope, the top. And I want to honor that by doing the right thing. So I just am asking for your help to do the right thing on voting day and to truly back up the words I say and the comments you make. Okay? There's Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. You're a beautiful person. Thank you very much for making this happen. I'd like to talk to Sharon offline about doing something with Anne-Marie when she visits Florida. If I can get her back on the show, if I can help broadcast something to make it a larger opportunity, then I've done something special to give them a voice. So thank you to everyone for supporting Anne-Marie. Okay? We really need her to have the voice to maybe be the next person that has this opportunity. The next Margaret Thatcher is going to happen. Maybe it's an Anne-Marie. And I'd love to see that. If we do that with our brothers and sisters, then we're doing something awesome. Remember that. Thank you, Princess Babs. You guys are tremendous. So let's finish the rally, which will give this guy a little bit of a break, and I can have some coffee. Okay? I was very honored to have her on. Anne-Marie, thank you very much for being part of the show today. You don't know what you've done for a lot of people here just with what you said. And by the way, if you didn't notice, Anne-Marie and I have a ton in common about love for our country and pride. And it's so nice to see that live and in person for me, because typically I'm talking to you guys. So it's very nice for me to see that. Thank you very much for saying that. It's very nice for me to see that and find that in other people and doing it out of the purest sense where they don't have a job. They've given everything up to do this. That is huge. So congratulations at the success so far, but don't sit on your laurels. The next step is huge for all of us, and we have a ton of work ahead. Stand by the people you support, vet your broadcasters like you vet your candidates, and the best things will happen. It's up to us now, not up to the people standing on stage. They've done tremendous work and put their lives on the line. Now it's our turn. You're welcome, Kathy. Let's finish the rally, all right? And then we have some other stuff to talk about, so let's finish the rally. I love Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan would be saying so many thank yous to President Trump, okay? Believe me, I was the biggest fan. My older brother played at Ronald Reagan's second swearing-in ceremony in the band, and a touching moment in my family. My mom is not a conservative, but I got to tell you, being part of that is a very big deal. So anyway, let's move on. Thank you very much, everyone. Let's move on. Thank you for the super hearts, comments, and shares. I saw all that, and I'm forever thankful. All right, let's move on.